And with that, we've got Jason in Oregon.
Hi, Jason.
How's it going, Jason?
How are you?
Hi, everything's going well here on my end.
Good.
That's
Help us
good.
wash this taste out. What would you like to talk about?
So, I recently got married, and
Congratulations.
yes, and my wife and I, she was married before she married me, and so now I'm a stepfather.
Okay, cool.
And my stepson, his name's Chris, he is 3, and sometimes he cries, and I often think I need to repent for some of my previous thoughts when I would see children screaming or crying. I would think, oh, those are bad.
Sorry.
So when he's crying, I think, okay, this is probably how God must feel. He sees the human race crying. He sees them screaming. And atheists and non-believers will look around, or heathens, if you call yourself so.
Sure.
Yeah.
They look around and they see the crying, and they assume that God is not real, and this is wrong.
Well, Jason, let me ask you, man.
Well,
if you had your child crying or in pain, would you go to that child?
You know, and I've thought about this, and with Chris, sometimes the best medicine or the best method or the best thing that my wife and I will do is we will put him in his room, and it's called crying it out. We will let him cry it out.
If your child was starving, would you let him cry it out?
Well, Chris eats. We take care of him.
So that is a check in your favor, because that already makes you better than your God. Let's try other things. If Chris needed to go to the hospital, right, it was seriously injured, would you take Chris to the hospital, or would you let him cry it out?
Well, reason would dictate the circumstances.
Broken leg.
Broken leg.
Okay. What if we gave you magic powers, Jason? Right? Let's say that Chris.
I'm sorry.
Oh, let's just pretend that you have magic powers, right? Yeah. And in this pretend, in this hypothetical, your son
can heal him.
Had some debilitating illness, cancer or some other parasite, and you could snap a finger and heal your son. Would you?
I'm tempted to say yes, but
well, of course you are, because you're a good parent. But it even gets better. Would you give your child that parasite? Would you give your child cancer if you could? Would you starve your child if you could? Would you break their leg first?
No, of course not.
Which is why you are also better than your God. Right, Jason?
Well, and I wouldn't.
I'm even assuming that your God is real, because we're talking about the character of this God, right? If you believe that God is all-knowing, all-loving, all-caring, all-powerful, right, then that God would do those things that you're doing. I don't even think that God exists, but if I went to the level of saying, okay, let's assume that God exists, let's take a look at its moral character, then what I would say there is that God is supremely immoral. That God is a thug and a monster. Right. And I think that is absolutely true. And I think that you're better than that. And I appreciate that. I like that. It means you're a good person, Jason.
Well, and I wasn't expecting to be a father, and now I'm a stepfather. And right now, Chris and I, we have a good relationship, and I have a good relationship with his mother. But it's just the 3 of us. And my wife and I are thinking about having a second. God, let's be honest. There are over 7 billion people on this planet. If God were just solving problems,
Jason,
then where would be the test?
Well, I can tell you where, but hold on.
The test would not be relevant. Which is more important?
Hold on.
Human beings are tested, and some of them get raped as children, or that human beings are not tested, or murdered, or die at age 2 from cancer or illness or malnutrition, or that doesn't happen and, we missed out on a test. What is it that God can't know in his omniscience without testing human beings by putting them through suffering?
And as you answer,
that's a good question.
okay, Jason,
I agree.
Jason, you're going in and out. It sounds like you might be moving your mouth away from the microphone.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just sitting here in my den.
Oh,
That's
you're
okay.
fine.
No, the audio was going in and out, and it was hard to hear.
Okay, sorry. I jumped in there a little bit aggressively, and I don't want you to feel like I'm mad at you. I just wanted to get the point out, which is
I don't sense that you're mad at all.
Oh, good. That's good.
But there are 7 billion people on this planet. I think if God were to go around, writing every turtle, if he were going around fixing our problems, then I don't think we collectively would learn much of anything.
Well, actually, let's test that, Jason. I love going back to heaven and talking about heaven for this example. Do you think that there's free will in heaven? Do you think you can make any choices in heaven?
Yes.
You do?
Okay. I believe there's a heaven, and I believe that we decide if we will go there.
Well,
all right. Do you believe that people can learn things in heaven?
Well, that's even not necessary.
Well, no, in the same way that you are saying that people can learn things on Earth.
Well, I'm hoping to meet my grandparents and my great-grandparents who have died, who are there now, and I will learn from them.
Okay,
so
perfect.
I do think there's...
Perfect.
So Jason, we've gotten to the idea that you believe that there's a heaven, that in that heaven is the people that you love, that have died, that you get to see again, and that you have that free will and ability to make choices, right? Is there suffering in heaven?
And I would like to learn from Mark Twain. I believe that Mark Twain is at the feet of Jesus now, and I want to learn from Mark Twain as well.
Sure, man. There are a whole lot of awesome things that you can put in heaven as an idea. That seems really nice. But Jason, so is there suffering in heaven? Broken bones, parasites.
Been to heaven.
But I'm just taking what you think of it, right? Is there, extreme pain and suffering and all that?
No.
Are there hurricanes in heaven?
I have a testimony that heaven is a time. Well, it's maybe not a time, but a realm. I guess might be a better word. But
that's fine.
It is a realm of peace and love and understanding and
wonderful
learning. I hope to learn.
Wonderful, Jason. So we've established. Hold on. We've established that there's free will, that choices are made, that you can learn, and that there's no suffering in heaven, right?
No suffering.
Okay.
No hurricanes, no...
So how come...
No...
So why would God ever subject the human race to suffering? For example, mass disease and hurricanes.
Right, because you just gave us what you believe is God being able to create a place where people can make choices and learn and choose to do all of those things without suffering.
Were you asking a question? I guess I don't understand.
So
sure.
It sounds as though this call has been, bad things happen in the world, but God cannot solve everyone's problem, is sort of part of the underlying message I'm hearing you say. You haven't said exactly those words, but I think that's the gist of at least part of what you're calling in to say. Yeah. And what we're saying is...
That's not the whole kit and caboodle,
I believe that. I believe that there's a lot more to it than that. I don't think you would have called in with 2 sentences and then, talked as long as we have if that was all you had to say. But if God is capable of creating a realm where human beings can learn and not suffer, why would he then create a realm where human beings suffer and learn?
Well, I teach high school mathematics, and I could put it this way. School is a microcosm of life. And school is necessary that we learn, and perhaps we can see that this planet and this plane of existence is the school, that our souls are here to learn. And then, of course, at death, we graduate.
Jason?
Some, of course, will drop out.
So I think
graduate from life.
Okay.
So Jason, I think that
hold on.
That is hell.
Hold on.
yeah, it's a tech problem. It's
Yeah.
his phone. Jason, so let's play with that analogy, but first let's say this analogy, if we, when we're talking about it and examining how it applies, if we come to learn that, oh wait, it doesn't actually describe the world very well, can we agree that we would set it aside? Right? So if we, for example, if we had a bad analogy like, oh, life is like a soccer game, and we figured out that, no, actually, there's no goalkeeper or whatever, we would set that analogy aside and find a different way of describing life? Can we do that with...
You know, I'm certainly open to a different
Right.
analogy.
So what I would say is...
If I can I add just one item? Can
Of course.
I tack on something to my analogy?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ would be the principal of the school.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know. Or even the assistant principal, his father would be the principal.
And then the administration is the Trinity, and the all the angels
Sure.
are like teachers. Yeah,
Sure.
I think it's
But if you'd
an
like to-
interesting and certainly poetic analogy. But what I would say is, if you saw a school where teachers and teachers' aides and principals and the administration stood by in classrooms and in the food court and watched the children murder each other, I think you and I could agree that that would not be a very good school, right? Or that they watched and some people didn't get food and some people did, that the administration of that school would change how that school works to make it better for the students.
You know, that's a good response. I hadn't thought of that, and you know, I can't catch every misbehavior, and
That's true.
and
We're humans. We're
administration-
not perfect.
No.
Yeah,
But if the idea is that there is a God that could catch every misbehaving and that would be perfect, right? The school is, I mean, this sort of sounds a little bit Orwellian, but the school has an infinite number of security cameras looking at everything from every direction, and the principal's brain is connected to it. So God can see everything, and it's a smart school. So God can manipulate the existence of desks and everything in every part of it. We're stretching this analogy as far as it can go. But God is capable of
I understand.
even, controlling a student's, ability to stand up straight. He can wave his hand and then they freeze in time or whatever. Wouldn't you expect a principal that wanted human beings to learn and to not suffer to stop them from suffering, particularly when it meant that they wouldn't learn? And I think the point that we're making is no one learns anything if they get killed in a hurricane.
Well, and I'm understanding your response. Your implication would be that our God is an incompetent principal, or that Jesus is incompetent, and I
would agree.
I don't see that at all. I think that they are competent. We could say omnicompetent, if you'd like.
Okay, so here's what I will say, because actually, let me add something to this analogy. Let's say that you are told, there is a principal and a dean of students. We'll say that's God, the Father, and the Son, whatever. The administration exists. They've come out and they've addressed the students many, many generations ago, and the students have carried this legend on. But the principal's office is locked, right? You don't get to go there until you graduate, right?
Okay.
And people are saying, oh no, the principal has an infinite number of security cameras and, unbelievably sophisticated technology such that they can affect anything that happens in any classroom at any time. They're there, they're watching, and they want you to learn. And if you pray, and if you speak out loud in a specific way, they listen, and they're good, and they want good things to happen to you, and they have a plan for your education. If I looked around in a classroom and I saw that classroom operated exactly how you'd expect it to if it was run by students without intervention from teachers, do you think it would be reasonable in this hypothetical school for me to assume, well, there isn't a teacher intervening here and there's not a principal bringing order, The discipline comes either from students organizing themselves without reference to the principal, or there's a lead student that's saying, no, the principal wants you to do this, you should do it anyway, and they listen to that. If I saw that, I would go, well, I don't see any reason to believe that a principle exists, but I think that we should all find a way of working together and learning. We have these textbooks here, let's learn from them. And that is effectively the atheist position. I don't know whether or not there's a principal or a principal's office, and so I'm not going to cry out for help from one.
Okay, so in other words, you will turn to your fellow classmates or your fellow schoolmates and seek help from them if there's, say, a murder in the hall or somebody's chewing gum.
Well, if you don't see any teachers or a principal handy, there's no administration that you can find. Yeah.
My rule would be you can chew gum as long as you pick up after yourself, but...
Okay.
Sorry. That always annoyed me in school.
I don't want it in anyone's hair. I said ears, I meant hair.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. What about the hair?
Oh, that I just don't want gum in the carpet and I don't want it in hair.
Yeah.
So in my school, I would let the students chew gum.
That's probably true.
And I think God, our principal, I think he's quite reasonable. He lets us chew gum. He lets us communicate with one another in the classes.
Jason,
but I would also say that God allows a murder to occur in the hallway.
Actually, it's worse than that.
Yeah.
It's worse than that because if you think that your God knows everything that's going to happen, do you? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you think that your God knows everything that's going to happen?
I do.
Then your God put a murderer in the classroom, knowing that murderer would murder.
Well, he has an all-seeing eye and infinite foreknowledge. Of course he would be able to see.
Oh, yeah, and of course, if you think that every student is there because the principal chose them, then you know that God is absolutely responsible for the terror and horror that would happen, right? That's why I think that Jamie's example is absolutely perfect, because it's far more likely that there's not a principal than that there's some megalomaniac who's watching and recreating Lord of the Flies every day. It's just a whole lot less likely.
The world's not that
And Jason, I've got to tell you, man, you need to give yourself more credit.
Yeah.
The fact that you would reach out and stop a student from injuring another makes you better than your God. The fact that you would feed your child, your child when they cried out, makes you better than your God. The fact that you would take them to a hospital makes you better than your God.
Yeah, you intervene to help other people more than God evidently does.
Well,
you feed people that God didn't. You help people that God didn't. You would heal people that God hasn't.
Well, I think I was going to say I'm a proponent of science. I think God has given us the sciences.
Of course you do. If your God existed, your God would have created everything, right?
Yeah, including the diseases we study.
Sure. Your God is saddled with all of that.
I'm glad to hear that you're a proponent of science. I think we can agree on that as a good thing. The students should learn.
And I think we are.
Sorry?
I won't come to Rob's defense, because I think quite a few people indulge in self-abuse, Christians and Catholics and many others.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, are we going back to masturbation?
You know what? It just crops up in the minds of the people often. What I will say is,
ever.
I can say I agree with you and I hope I'm not reading into your meaning here, if you're saying it is a part of human nature to...
Well, it is, and I think it's sinful, but for me to tell you that I've never indulged would be a lie. I think Rob himself masturbates.
I think that's highly likely.
Every other day.
Yeah, and if he calls it self-abuse, I'd say he needs to practice more and probably try and...
we could call it something else.
But either way, if that God existed, he gave you all the tools to do it and the motivation to. So, again, that would just kind of make that God a jerk. But again, we're talking about...
my call.
Yeah, and it's an interesting problem of evil.
Yeah.
And that is what it is. It's the problem of evil.
I'm sorry, we were all talking at once. I apologize.
No, I talked over you too. You go ahead, and then and then we can wrap up this call.
I said that I needed to go, but I appreciate that both of you gentlemen took my call, that you allowed me to reach out and express my ideas. And it's okay if we are at an impasse and if we don't agree. I'm almost certain you boys are familiar with the comedy of George Carlin. Atheist, and, probably not my favorite comic because he was so profane, but in defense of masturbation, it's my understanding that George Carlin said if God did not want us to masturbate, he wouldn't have allowed our arms to reach that part of the anatomy.
We'd all be T-Rexes.
And you'll have to look up the quote. That was a paraphrase. That wasn't verbatim.
I love it. All right, Jason, thank you for calling in, buddy.
Thank you, and feel free to call back as well. I think we had a good discussion. We'd be able to have a
And I'm here to listen. I'm here to express myself, share my testimony of the everlasting blood of the Lord.
That's
so
gross.
Well,
the blood part is gross.
Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you for calling in.
I'm just going to end this conversation out by saying, Jason, I think that there are consequences to these discussions, and I really don't think that everyone's opinion is equal, right? Because I think that if you're telling somebody that they can't touch themselves, or you're saying that, you're just going through the test right now, you don't graduate until you die, then you run the risk of people not being able to tell the people that they love them before they pass, because you'll just get the chance to see them again. And Jason, I'm going to leave you with a quote. Neil's in our live chat, gave a quote, and it is, "Religion was invented when the first con man met the first fool." That was by Mark Twain.
Oh, yes.
That was by Mark Twain.
It's attributed to Mark Twain.
Yep. Feet of God. Anyway, take care.
I actually would like to respond to that quote. Nope.
No, I know. I know. But
there's this idea that, it must have been started as a con. Like, no. Have you ever just... But you don't have to go to children. You don't have to go to people that don't know. You can just talk to other adults and just see superstitions form. It's either UT or Southwestern. It's one of the colleges that I went to. There's a superstition that if on your way to take a test you see a squirrel, that's good luck.
Okay.
That's not based on anything old. That's human minds now in our super educated. Sorry, I bumped into this. The ancient people, they think so much differently than we do. No, you've got the same monkey brain that they had, and you're not being aware of it makes it much more dangerous for you to think about things.
We are aware of it.
Shaking.
We're not outside of it. Stephen Brewer donated $20.